this time. So hopefully this won't be too long. I'm going to ask that if you are not in this meeting, please to step out while we take care of the business. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. Hopefully this won't take too long. We're going to skip item number 1, which is House Bill 466, and we're going to move down to House Bill 525, which is a correction omnibus bill. And what we've agreed to do on 525 is to do a strike all on the Senate bill, on the House bill, and add all of the language that we passed out in Senate Bill 2795 and insert the Senate language into that bill. And that's what the strikeout does. We added a few other things and made some technical amendments. However, this is still a work in process, so it will go to conference so that we can continue to work on this to make sure that, again, we get something, not only get something to the governor this year, but get something signed. So that's where we are on this bill. If there's any questions. Senator Simmons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had 2 substantive changes that I wanted you to consider or wanted the committee to consider. I don't know if would they be friendly amendments. I know it's a work in progress, but I know with the version that we passed in the Senate, we were differentiating between 1995, post 1995, and also we had a distinction post 2014. And the concern that I had, and I know you are aware of it, is that we are treating crimes post 2014 different for parole purposes than what we are doing post 1995. And I was wondering if we can just treat everything post 1995 and treat it all the same. So the amendment, and for the members of the committee who probably don't know, after 2014, when we passed 585, there's a concern that a lot of the sentences went up because a lot of prosecutors, DAs, public defenders, and judges all felt as if everything was 50%, but then we had an AG's opinion that clarified that a lot of the sentences that were actually given were not 50%. So with the proposal that we had to treat it 30 years and or 50%, that's kind of like what for post 2014. So what I want for you to consider, if we can treat all crimes after 95 and treat them all at 50% and or 20 years, not for release, but just for parole consideration. That's.
Are you asking that? Are you asking this as a question, or you offering an amendment?
I'm offering it as an amendment.
Okay. Well, so can you state so is that your amendment?
Yep, that's my amendment, Mr. Chairman. And what the amendment does, there's language in the bill that would treat crimes after 2014 differently than crimes post 1995. And so what I want to do is just treat, for parole purposes, all violent offenses at 50% and or 20 years. And I know it's going to conference, but I just want that to be considered by the committee in the House version.
Well, again, we took all the language from the House bill and reinserted the Senate bill language, and so with this being a working process, I'm going to oppose the amendment because this is something that I've been working on with every organization possible, and I want this to continue to move forward, and I don't want to do anything right now that may even jeopardize the bill even being signed. So, but everything that everyone says is being considered and is being talked about, but I'm going to oppose the amendment at this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Is there any other questions? If not, I ask my vice chairman for a motion on the proposed, on the strike on. Thank you. It's in motion, time sufficient to pass strike all. All in favor, let it be known by the sign of aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. The next bill we have is House Bill 557. And I'm going to ask Senator Sparks if he would to explain the bill.
House Bill, thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 557 addresses non-adjudication process. The non-adjudication process is generally when a defendant offers a plea of guilty. The court does not accept that plea. They set it aside and give certain conditions to the defendant to complete so that that felony will not, in fact, ever be a conviction on their record. One of the things that is really being proposed with this bill is that completion of a workforce training program or other similar program potentially offered through our community colleges or other groups would be part of that sentencing requirement from the circuit court. That is the general purpose of the bill, and in Section 3 there is some language about a monetary consideration. This is supposed to be out of the general funds of the budget of the Department of Corrections budget. I spoke with the author of this bill from the House end recently, or one of the authors, and that's the bill. I will have an amendment that I'm offering for a reverse repealer at the appropriate time, but I would yield any questions at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Is there any questions on the bill?
If there's not any questions, I would move for adoption of the amendment, which is the insertion of a reverse repealer.
Okay.
If
It's
it's-
already has a reverse repealer.
Okay. Section 4.
It's not. Okay. I'm looking at the wrong bill. I'm sorry.
Yeah, 557, line 137, I would move to insert a reverse repealer in the passage language.
Okay.
Starts on 137, goes through 138. It's a reverse repealer. That's my amendment.
Okay. You all have heard the amendment. Any questions? All in favor of the amendment, let it be known by the sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Would move for adoption.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the proper time, please.
It's proper time.
May I proceed, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Sparks, Mr. Vice Chair. This is a great bill. The last two sessions, we've been talking about rehabilitating offenders and getting them in the workforce training, getting them back on their feet, reducing costs of MDOC, reducing the incarceration rate. And one of the ways we could do that is through this non-adjudication statute. And I think we need to utilize it more so than we are. And that's why my amendment is to make non-adjudication mandatory when it meets that criteria as stated in the statute. And so my amendment is to remove on line 32, be in line 32 and 33, remove and strike the words "be empowered," and then on line 34 to strike the word "to." That will make non-adjudication mandatory. Now, this doesn't mean it will happen automatically. This will still go before the judge. The judge can approve or disapprove of the plea bargain that has occurred. So this is not a, this is not going to happen unless the DA offers a plea of this nature, the indictment is sufficient, and the judge approves on it. So there are lots of checks and balances that will take place, and if we want to get more defendants, subjects, inmates, whatever you want to call them, back in the workforce, we need to utilize this statute more often, and this will allow for that. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll make that amendment and answer any questions if there are any.
Okay, you all have heard the amendment. Are there any questions to the amendment?
If there are none, I'll move for adoption of the amendment, Mr. Chairman.
It's been moved that we adopt the amendments. All in favor, let it be known by the sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes carry. Senator DeBar would ask for a motion. Motion from you.
As amended.
Thank you. It's been moved. Title sufficient do pass. Strike all as amended. All in favor, let it be known by the sign of aye. All opposed? Ayes carry. Thank you. The next one is the work release program that authorized courts and sheriffs to assign certain convicted offenders while confined in the county jail. This is a bill that several of the county sheriffs have reached out to myself and my colleagues on the House side, and it is a very good bill. It's a bill that's following the model of what's been done out in Rankin County with Sheriff Bailey. And like I said, we have talked about this, and it's a good bill that would keep some of those inmates within the county jails to be used, and to also get necessary training and job training, and to be close to the loved one. That's something that we've been talking about for a while as well. So that's a simple explanation of the bill. If there's any questions, I'll try to answer your questions. Senator Simmons.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this bill would allow the inmates to go to a work release program at MPIC?
Sir?
I say, so this bill will allow the inmates to basically go to a work release program at Mississippi Prison Industries?
Yes.
Do we know the recidivism rate for the inmates who work there?
I'm not sure what the recidivism rate is there, but I do know that those individuals who have gone through a similar program out at the Rankin County facility, their recidivism rate is lower than it is in most places, and a lot of those people have left there to go on to get job placement in the private and some in the public sectors as well.
Do we know if any of the inmates who've worked at MPIC have been hired by MPIC once they were released?
There has been several individuals that has been hired by MPIC once they have been released. Some have even worked in the offices as secretarial, do secretarial work. There has been some that has also been used to train individuals while they're employed for MPIC.
Okay. And I guess one of the reasons why we went away from allowing inmates to work at the counties, because there was a push that we were allowing free labor and the inmates were not basically receiving the money for their hard work. And so I guess my concern is, and I'm very familiar with the work release program, is why would we specifically allow them just to work one place? Like what's the benefit, or why are we doing legislation just to allow them just to work at MPIC? That's my question.
Yes.
If I may just respond to that just a little bit, I did talk with the folks at MPIC, and I've expressed to them on repeated occasions, and they're receptive of it, that any program that we're utilizing would need to have some level of consideration for funds for the inmate, funds for restitution, funds going toward fines, that actual compensation is getting toward where market is, or at least where the minimum wage situation is. So I think there potentially could be multiple industries that are involved, but I think MPIC would be the oversight situation that already have a relationship with MDOC. But I share your concerns, Senator, and that's the intent of the bill is to make sure that they're working in jobs that will benefit them in the future as well while they're incarcerated.
And also, could you or the chairman, vice chairman Sparks, address the issue regarding the money? Because I've actually represented a lot of offenders. And even when we had restitution centers, the issue becomes they don't have any money from all of the work that they've actually put in. They'll go to this facility, and the agency and or the fees, the lodging, all of that will be held. And by the time that they are released and they go into community corrections and they are trying to re-enter society, they don't have any money. And I want us, as this bill goes through the process, just like if I had a job, I want my money, then let's treat offenders and inmates in the system the exact same way. If they are working somewhere, they should be able to keep their money. That's my concern.
Senator, and I'm glad you asked that question as well. I think you and I have maybe had that conversation, and this year didn't start that conversation. I've always felt like if those individuals are working, then they should be compensated for what they're doing. And I've had that conversation with MPIC as well, that these individuals will be given a wage that instead of this 25 cent or 32 cent an hour, what they was getting to these individuals, if you're going to compensate them, then compensate them with some dignity and not with this pay that they were getting. So, but I promise you, as this goes forward, then we will make sure that what you are asking and some of the things that we've been saying will possibly happen with this piece of legislation. So,
And thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I do appreciate all your hard work you've put in it. Thank you.
thank you for your question, Senator Chazanon.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to address something that was brought up by Senator Simmons. The peer committee is in the process, I should say, of doing a thorough study of MPIC, and we are working with them to be sure that the goal of recidivism reduction is paramount, but that also that job training, which is to help people have a high level of dignity once they are released from incarceration, is also paramount. But I did want to let Senator Simmons know that the peer committee will have a report on that, which will be available for him to study.
Thank you. And there is a reverse repealer in this bill as well. So, Senator Wiggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On line 50, curious what offender volunteers is. I didn't see any definition in the statute, and it doesn't read like it's applying to anything. It says, and if it appears to the court that such offender is a suitable candidate for work release, and such offender volunteers, assign them to that. Do we know what offender volunteers are?
Senator, I'm not sure what. I would do my best to get you an.
Is it in a category within MDOC or anything?
I think, and I can double check on this, but I think simply you have to volunteer to be part of a labor program. They cannot point at someone and say, you're going to go work on the work program. That would be my reading of it, but I will get an answer before we come to the floor.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other questions? Senator Samson Jackson, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On line 70, beginning of line 78, if an offender who has been assigned to such a program by the court is in violation of the rules of the program, the Mississippi Department of Correction, what exactly does that mean, in violation of the rules of the program?
It means that there are certain guidelines that these individuals will have to agree to abide by in order to be part of this program, and if the offender shall not keep his or her commitment, then they can be in violation of what was agreed upon, and therefore not be able to participate in the program.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Senator Simmons of the 13.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a question. When you talk about the offender wages, maybe distribute to pay certain travel expenses and employment and child support and fine. So on this bill, how will you determine what percentage of child support, fine, or restitution fees will be paid per
I
offender?
heard the child support part, but I couldn't hear the rest of it. I couldn't understand.
I said, what percentage will go toward child support, fine, and restitution or costs per offender with this bill?
I think what would happen on this instance, is, Senator, is that if there's a certain amount of your pay or whatever that's already determined that you should have to pay based on what your wages are to child support, I think the same thing would apply to this based upon what their wages are. A percentage of that shall, if they are having to pay child support, shall be used to pay for the child support.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Norwood.
Mr. Chairman, I want to make sure, understand. Now, we're not talking MPIs only, exclusively, are we? They can work with the sheriff departments and...
That's correct.
Okay.
Is there any other questions on the bill?
Motion at the proper time, Mr. Chairman.
You recognize for a motion, Senator.
Title sufficient, do pass.
Thank you. Title sufficient, do pass. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. The next one we have is one that we just passed. It's been a back and forth bill. So this is a reentry for offenders, bring forth certain code sections. And what we did in Judge B was to, if I can find it. I don't see a copy of it either. I got a copy of it right here. Okay. Well, what we did, we took the House bill, struck out most of the language, inserted the Senate language that we had sent over. And the change that was made today was that, was on line 16 and 17, that basically said the senior court judge of any circuit court may establish this type of program, and that's basically what we did in Judge B this morning. So that was the only change that was made to it. So if there's not any questions, you have a question?
I do. A question, and I was in that Judge B meeting. I'm willing to let this move on through with this language, with the understanding that before it comes to the floor, we've got to make sure that whatever the pilot program was, the vetting and the verification, that they could sustain the pilot program is also able to be maintained by the people who are going to participate. So I did ask, and I spoke with Senator Derek Simmons about it, and I think we're in agreement that we want to get with the powers that be that chose these 3 pilot districts, and we would love for everybody to participate that can be successful. But I do want to make sure that if we find that to be opposite, then I would have a floor amendment. But at this time, I just, as it relates to the bill, that was the change that you're referencing. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. You have a question, Senator Simmons?
I just wanted to say, Mr. Chairman, that, yeah, I was in Judge B, and that is correct. I talked to Senator Sparks. The original bill had only 3 circuits in it, and of course, in the Delta, we have the 11th Circuit, which covers Tunica, Coahoma, and Bolivar, and then we have the 4th Circuit, which covers Washington, LaFleur, and Sunflower, and no circuits in the Delta had an opportunity to participate in this program, reentry program. And also in the committee, in Judge B, when we considered the Senate bill, Senator Angela Turner Ford wanted to try to see if it was an opportunity for her circuit to participate. So that's the reason why we had to change to basically say any circuit, provided that they could do it and be successful. So we didn't want to exclude any circuits if they were able to do it and have a good program as we try to move into this era of reentry. And so I talked to my circuit court judges in the Delta, and they thought this was a great opportunity, and they didn't want us to get past this session, and they decided to do it, and there was no general law that allowed them to do it. So that's the reason why we made the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Motion?
Thomas Bishop to pass as amended. Got amended in the last meeting, I'm not sure it's just Thomas Bishop to pass.
Okay. So in motion, times sufficient to pass. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion? Thank you all.